everybody, to a new edition of the Big Sky Now podcast. I'm your host, Josh Amick, and this week we got a lot to go over from last week, but also on the episode dropping on Thursday, we finally have some Big Sky conference matchups coming up. So exciting week coming up. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the Big Sky Conference Player of the Week. Eli Gillman of the Montana Grizzlies rushed for 175 yards and a ridiculous 12.5 yards per rush. John, you were at this game. Was this game at home in Montana a little closer than you expected?
I wouldn't say that, final score-wise, it was closer than we expected. Western Carolina is a ranked team. They were a good opponent. They played well against NC State. But the way that they came out and started the game and went out 17-0 over Montana in the second quarter, I think that surprised a lot of people, both inside the stadium, and I was checking Twitter, and there were quite a few people talking about it. So Eli Gillman, though, definitely deserving of that award. You mentioned 12.5 yards per carry in that game. He's actually over 10 yards per carry for the entire season still. So
that's great.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing that surprised me was how well Cole Gonzalez started for Western Carolina coming out onto the road. He was 12 for 13 in that first quarter, and then Montana's defense shored up. He only went 13 for 34 after that. I know Kerwin Bell, their coach, said that he may have suffered a second-degree separation in his shoulder during the game, so had to tough it out to finish that. But I don't know if that had any effect on his throwing. But yeah, the Grizz kind of lucked out after that poor start to play so well, over 500 yards of offense, and be able to get the victory to move to 3-1.
Yeah, Fritz, with you being the other Montana expert, what happened in this game?
Yeah, that was a great start by Western Carolina, and we knew they were pretty good. I didn't expect maybe 17-0, and then the Grizz seemed to be getting momentum and got torched for a 61-yarder. And like Jen said, they got worn down a little bit. Montana got awfully physical a couple times after the whistle, and their quarterback. I really like how Gillman looks this year. He's the Jerry Rice Award winner for Freshman of the Year in the whole subdivision, but I thought the last month or so of last season into the playoffs, he was less effective, maybe worn down a little bit. Now he looks stronger, more dynamic. He's making cuts and leaps and bounds and pulling away from people. He's probably not a 25 carry a guy, per game guy yet. That's why you only saw him carry it 14 times the other day. There's a lot of season left. And as for the final score, I was off by a touchdown. I thought the Grizz won by 17. They won by 11.
Mark, did you happen to catch this game as well?
I watched the first half last night just to kind of get a feel for what the heck happened, because just tracking on Saturday, Western Carolina got off to such a big start, and then Montana kind of overcame all that, and it kind of looked like, I don't know if Montana kind of played soft zone defense in the first half and kind of to see what was going to happen. But I mean, Western Carolina threw the ball really well in the first half and not so much in the second half. And then you look at Montana and they got all sorts of offensive weapons. I mean, nice to have Bergen back and Fonts and Xavier Harris on those fly sweeps, and Gillman, Osno, and running quarterback, or a quarterback that can run. So it looked like they just kind of wear them down, and a lot of chunk plays as the game went on for Montana.
Yeah. I didn't have I don't have too much more to add on what beyond what everyone else said. I just wanted to highlight that last, second to last Montana drive. Ate up about 7 minutes of the clock and converted three or four times on third and fourth down. Really kind of sealed the game for them in that one. And I mean, mounting a 17-point comeback win, I guess, that's something that they'll probably rely on maybe later in the year. Obviously, Montana's a team that's looking to but build off of that runner-up performance in the national championship. So anytime you can kind of have that experience in your back pocket, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I do. I'm glad that you brought that up because I did want to talk about that. John, what was the atmosphere like? 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're going for it on 4th and 4. What do you think? Obviously, it worked out for them, but you think that was the right call, or was that a risky call?
Yeah, I like the call going for it on 4th down there on that last drive. I know Bobby said in the Bobby Houck in the post-game press conference said that if it's earlier in the game, they're probably kicking there, but knowing that Western Carolina's only got that one possession left. More than likely, if they drive down and score a touchdown, kick the extra point, you still lose if you kick a field goal. So go for broke and try to get the 7 there. So I think it was the right decision. Of course, in the end, getting the win makes it even better.
Exactly. If it goes the other way, we might be having a different conversation. But luckily for the Grizz, it went their way. Moving on, Idaho, another impressive performance from them. They snuck out a win against Abilene Christian on the road. With Jack Wagner playing so well, and Jack Lamb expected to be back at some point from his broken collarbone injury, do you think they stick with Wagner, Mark, or do you think they go back to the original starter?
I think they go back to Lane. I mean, he earned the job in camp. Usually you don't lose your job, because of injury when you return. And he didn't really do anything to lose it when he was playing either. So it wasn't like they benched him and Wagner came in. It's nice to know you got 2 quarterbacks. I mean, who knew the Big Sky was going to be so deep at quarterback with some of these teams? With usually once you lose the starter, you kind of take a drop off. I guess the other thing it might maybe do, knowing what they have in Wagner, is maybe they don't rush Lane back. They don't feel like they have to bring him back before he's absolutely healed. So that would make maybe the only difference, after what Wagner has done the last few weeks.
And do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same impression. I think they want Wagner to make it a little more difficult for them when that decision time does come later in the year, when Lane is more healed. But just kind of looking at how he's done, how Wagner's done through these last 3 games, I think it's 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, if I remember right. The completion percentage definitely isn't there. I think he's hovering around like 50%. But I think once Lane is healthy again later in the year, I think it'll be his job. Like Mark said, he did win it in camp.
Prince, what are your thoughts on Wagner?
I think it might be kind of a Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe deal where Wagner's playing so well, it's going to be hard to get him out of the lineup. And he played well again. I don't know if you guys caught much of that game, but it was like I think it was 27-3, and it was like Abilene Christian called their IT department. The IT department said, turn the game off and turn it back on again because the lights went out right after Idaho made an interception. And then the lights weren't off very long. And then Idaho had to punt, and then it was all Abilene Christian. And Abilene Christian got into Idaho territory late. Like they were 1 first down, I think, from kicking or attempting to kick a tying field goal. But up until that point, Wags was the man. They were playing really good football, offense and defense. And then that Idaho defensive line asserted itself right at the very end. But long story short, I think they might stick with Wags.
John, you got the last vote. Are you going back to your original starter, or are you rolling with the hot hand?
I'd probably go back to Jack Lane if it was me, but I definitely would want to see kind of how he plays back in, and with Wagner playing well, you can kind of maybe alternate him in for a game when Lane's getting healthy to make sure he's 100% before you do throw him back out there. So it's definitely not a bad situation for the Vandals to be in.
Wasn't that you a couple of weeks ago that brought up that phrase, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks at all? Do you think that applies to this situation?
I think this is a situation where you can kind of get away with it just because it is coming back from injury. You don't want to throw a guy out there who's not 100% if you don't have to. But once he does get it to 100%, it's going to be a situation where they need to make a decision.
All right, we'll see. I think if Wagner keeps playing the way he's playing, I don't think you find a way to bench this guy unless they get into Big Sky Conference play, and then the wheels start coming off. But moving on, another award-winning week for a couple different defensive players. Kamari Munir Bailey of Weber State recorded 3 sacks, and Sacramento State's Elias Mulliken had 2 interceptions and a touchdown return. Both of those performances helped their teams win. What stood out to you in these games between Weber and Sacramento State, Ian?
Yeah, for the more impressive performance to me, I always, for me, I'm a little more partial towards the offensive and defensive line play. So I want to go with Kamari Munir Bailey. 8 total tackles on top of those 3 sacks, and I think it was 6 tackles for loss. Obviously, both teams had really strong defensive performances as a team, but that performance just stuck out to me a little more, in my opinion.
Prince, you think it was co-defensive was deserving, or do you think it should have went to one or the other?
Oh, I didn't really research it that much. I just I was looking more at the who had the more impressive win. I thought Weber State really needed a bounce back game after their loss at Lamar, and both teams pitched a shutout. But I was really I thought Weber State needed to kind of get some momentum back, and I think they did that this past weekend.
John, what stood out to you with these two performances?
Yeah,
Or the team or the players?
Yeah, I mean, just with the teams, Sacramento State now 2 FCS opponents that they've played after their 2 FBS opponents, they've only given up 1 touchdown in those 2 games. The defense is really playing well at this point of the season, going into conference play. And with Weber State, like was mentioned earlier, just a bounce back game against Northwestern State on the road after you pick up that loss at Lamar is really good for the team, especially when you can get it with a shutout.
Yeah, you look at the stats on Weber, I mean, they outgained the team they beat like 3-1 and 20-9 in first downs. They pretty much, dominated that game. Sac State, their backup quarterback had another nice game. Another team with 2 good quarterbacks.
Yeah, I thought Sacramento State was impressive. Just pitching another shutout. Weber State played Northwestern State. It was a good bounce back win for them, but let's not forget that Northwestern State surrendered up 87 points the week before that. So they may not have been the best opponent to gauge a bounce back win for Weber State. But Montana State continues to keep on winning with Big Conference Sky on the horizon. Who is best suited to end that winning streak, Fritz?
Well, I think the Idaho game on October 12th, even though it's going to be in Bozeman, I think that's the most dangerous game on their schedule right now. But I want to give props to the Twitter handle called The Jungle, which is or at least one Idaho State fan, because he said, and I quote, fraudulent 4-0 Bobcats will be facing their first actual opponent next Saturday. So the Cats go to Pocatello Saturday.
He said that about the Bengals?
That's the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals have a chance, but I do have to give props to their fans because they get after it pretty good. And this Jungle Twitter handle is a worthy follow. And so we'll see if it's a real opponent or not Saturday for the Bobcats. But I think October 12th, when they have to come back and face Idaho, that's going to be the real test.
John, what about you?
I'm kind of in that same boat with Fritz. I think we've all kind of mentioned that Week 7 game against Idaho is where Montana State's going to face their real big test this season, at least the first one, because conference play in Big Sky play is always really deep. Holt Arena is a difficult place to play. I've been to a game there myself, know that Idaho State fans can get pretty rowdy, but I don't think that the Bobcats are going to have any issue.
Yeah, I agree, John. I mean, ISU, that's a tough place to play. And I think they played the Grizz tough a year or 2 ago, or
more than once.
Yeah. And so Montana State's got to show up and play. Otherwise, Idaho State throws the ball. And, when you throw the ball, you kind of got a puncher's chance. And so it's kind of up to Montana State to show up and take care of business and take the crowd out and go home with an easy win. But if they don't, then we'll see.
And you circling October 12th too, or do you have a different game in mind?
Yeah, same. Idaho's the one that really stuck out to me. I'm definitely not as confident as the Idaho State fans that they'll be able to get the job done this coming weekend. But yeah, that Idaho game really stuck out to me. If they can't do it, obviously it'd be up to Montana at the end of the season. That was the other game that kind of stuck out to me on the schedule, as I'm sure it did for everyone else here. But
All right, another team we have to give credit to is UC Davis. They improved to 3-1 on the season. We haven't really gave the Aggies a lot of airtime on this podcast so far. But do you think the Aggies have a chance at all in this conference against the teams like Montana State and Montana? Do you think they have a shot to at least be co-champions or champions in this conference, John?
I don't think that they have what it takes to be at the top of the conference come the end of the season. I think they'll definitely be in the top half. I know kind of at the beginning of the season, for me at least, it was kind of would they live up to their preseason ranking. I feel like so far they've done well. They just haven't really been definitive in their games. They've had some close games against some pretty inferior opposition. Like Utah Tech, yes, it ended up 31-12, I believe. Kind of similar to what Montana State did with with the Trailblazers, but it's not exactly something that's got me thinking that they're going to blaze through conference play. So I think that they're going to be in a good position to make the playoffs, maybe get a seed, but I don't think that they're going to be in a position for a bye.
It seems like UC Davis is kind of the Rodney Dangerfield of the Big Sky. They kind of don't get the respect that they maybe deserve, and even especially compared to Sac State in their own neighborhood. So it's kind of, and maybe Sac State gets some more credit for playing a little tougher schedule like non-league and stuff like that. But UC Davis beat Sac State last year and still missed the playoffs. And they had a named coach in Dan Hawkins, which sometimes that helps. But obviously, it didn't. So I don't know that they can win the conference, but they're, could hang a loss or two on some other teams that think they should be in the hunt.
I was just taking a look at their end of the season schedule. The last 3 games, they go to Montana, host Montana State, and go to Sac State all in the last 3 weeks, back to back to back. That's a really tough way to end the season. I could definitely see them dropping at least 2 of those games, maybe all 3. But I think they have a shot, and I think we'll have a more solid answer to that question this weekend. Just kind of seeing how they match up against Idaho.
I feel the same way. I mean, that's a tough finish. They'll make us true believers if they get through that stretch. Like Ian said, Idaho is an awfully tough draw. They should be ranked, and there's a lot to like. They got that running back Laurent, they got Miles Hastings, but then I look at their stats against Utah Tech, and they barely outgained them. What a weird game! They got 29 first downs to 9, and they outgained them by like 16 yards. So I just don't know kind of what to make of them yet. I just keep waiting week to week to see them really assert themselves or make a statement. Maybe it'll happen this weekend.
All right, that's a perfect place for us to end this episode, because that is probably the game of the week next week, UC Davis against Idaho, 2 matchups of 3-1 teams. So join us on Thursday's episode. We'll break down the upcoming games for Big Sky Conference weekend. Should be a good weekend, should be a great podcast. So join us then. Always thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Josh Amick.